Hey everybody, I'm Joe DeGanzik, and this is the show where we talk about all kinds of new and energy efficient LED and other light bulbs. And we talk about lighting design for your home, your business, wherever, and we tie it all together with home automation and the Internet of Things and connected devices and all that stuff, those buzzwords that you hear all on the news these days. It is our 1-year anniversary this month. We'll be getting to more of that later on in an episode closer to the middle of the month. But many of you have, of course, asked for more LED light bulb reviews. So, well, we've got one. Actually, we've got 2 of them back to back, dual episodes coming out nearly the same time. And both of these you can find at Target. And I will have an updated LED buying guide episode probably near the end of May or so. Anyways, this guy you can find at Target. I like Target. Many people like Targets around the world, around the country, what have you. Target started carrying LED bulbs about a year or so ago, and I checked out some of the initial ones and they were not so great, and they have improved. This is one from GE. This is a 60 watt equivalent, soft white or warm white. You know, they'll label it in different methods, but basically it's the same type of thing. It's that warm kind of glow that you're expecting, and it's fairly true to it. The light output of this is not as yellow as the one I'm comparing it to, which I'll get to a little bit later, but it's pretty good. A little bit on the pink side, but it's all right. The manufacturers have moved away also on the physical design. They've moved away from the funky fins, and they have moved to this more soft shell. That sounds like a crab. It's not. You don't eat it. Anyways, it's a hard. It's a nice smooth casing. That's what I actually meant to say. And you have the light coming from this top piece here, and then no light coming from the bottom piece, which, as it turns out, and you can see in this comparison photo, it's actually not too bad. On the right is the GE LED, and I'm comparing it to my reference bulb, which is the Cree 4-flow that they introduced last fall. The reason I compare it is simply because it just survives the LED dimming torture test. The light looks good. It's got very good light dispersion and a few other things that I really care about, like flicker and whatnot. So a few other things to mention. I said it's 60 watt equivalent. So how much does it actually take? It takes a whopping 10.5 watts to run this guy. So it's 1/6 the amount of power. And if you ran this for, say, 4 to 6 hours a day, it's probably going to last you 15 to 20 years. That is the general claim that most of the companies make with their LED bulbs. So because I don't know every single fact about this bulb, I have my trusty cheat sheet here. So it is 800 lumens. 800 lumens is about where you need to be to have a 60 watt equivalent light bulb or light output. Most people are not used to lumens. If you're looking for a 40 watt equivalent, you want to be in the range of 450. And if you're looking at something over 60 watts, well, you're going to be well closer to 1,000 lumens. But anyways, for our purposes, 800 for this 60 watt equivalent. And let's see, temperature. I'm not talking about color temperature. We have a whole episode on that. But anyways, soft white is basically what you're looking for with this. But I'm talking about physical temperature. Now, again, comparing back to my reference bulb with the Cree and their funky fin design, which is basically an air-cooled LED bulb, this guy doesn't have fins or anything, but actually after running about 10 to 15 minutes, you can put your hand around it and it's not going to injure you. It runs about the same temperature as the Cree does, which is basically it's warm to the touch, but it's not hot. And that's great for kids, it's great for elderly, anyone who might touch a bulb that might be exposed, or especially if you're changing the bulb, which you generally don't need to do with these because they're going to last a long time. But the main factor is if it has less heat output, which most LED bulbs do, and this one is no exception to that rule, you're going to spend less money on air conditioning. So that's another bonus of LED bulbs. So before we get to my favorite topic, dimming, I want to talk about sound. One of the challenges with LED bulbs is when you put them on a dimmer and you dim them down, they get kind of buzzy. Some are really, really quiet. Some are really awful. The next generation Cree bulb that they released last fall was a lot quieter than their first generation bulb. And so I said, hey, that's great. Now the GE, to be honest, is actually quieter than the Cree. So that's earning bonus points for the GE bulb. And the other Target bulb that I'll review next in the next episode is even quieter. So on to my favorite topic, the dimming side of things. I am very, very particular about dimming. I don't like flicker. I like it to be smooth and not like jagged, like little stair step dimming where you can see the individual steps. Very few bulbs happen to do that well. So I have a dimming torture test and also a slider dimmer that is just a cheapo one. And the dimming torture test is on this Insteon dimmer from about 10 years ago, but it still works really, really well. It's a Lamp-Link first generation. Their current generation doesn't do as well on the low end. Smart home, please fix that. But anyways, if you happen to have these older ones, great. And if not, whatever dimmer you have most likely will work. I say most likely with most LED bulbs these days, but your results may vary. So let's go to the commentary and the dimming torture test, which is a 30-second, very slow torture test right now. Okay, so here we go. We're starting the dimming torture test. The GE is on the right, the Cree reference bulb, the 4-flow is on the left. You don't see much of a difference in the early part of the cycle. This is a 30-second dimming cycle, but as we get lower and lower, you'll start seeing some changes to the brightness. We've got the aperture cranked really, really down so we can capture the brightness just a little bit at the very tail end. Here goes now. You can actually start seeing it dim down, and you'll see that the Cree nicely dims out and the GE pops off. So we come back up and the GE pops back on, the Cree comes back up just nicely. And at this point, it's hard to see basically as it's coming brighter and brighter and brighter. The camera just can't really compensate that well for it. But there is the dimming torture test both down and up. It does a fairly good job, but fairly good job is not perfect. This is the slider dimmer with the same GE LED bulb on the right, and we'll take a look at that. It's not perfect because it's just a manual slider. And you'll notice that they both tend to pop off right about there, way above 0%. It's more like about 25 or 30%. And we're going to come back up. It takes a lot on this slider dimmer to have them pop back on. That's about 40% that they pop on at the brightness, and then we can come back all the way up, and I'll sort of fiddle with it up and down here a little bit. So it's definitely dimmer compatibility, and LED bulb is a combination of the dimmer and the bulb. Okay, so it survived the dimming torture test, but as you can see in this photo, at the very bottom of the spectrum, at the very bottom of the brightness at 1%, it is definitely brighter than the Cree, which is basically showing just a nice little barely warm glow there. And so it did okay, but it popped off at the bottom, and it kind of had to pop back on to come back up on the torture test, and obviously it worked fairly okay with the slider dimmer. And so overall, it's a pretty decent bulb if your needs are not low end of the brightness spectrum on dimming. You're probably going to be okay with this. Let me go back to the cheat sheet and make sure I'm not leaving anything out. Yes, packaging. Packaging, because, well, even if you watch this review and you pick this bulb up and you decide to return it, well, as you can see by this photo, the packaging, you pretty much have to destroy it. I wish companies would actually make the packaging a lot easier to deal with, a lot easier to put together, so that it doesn't increase the cost, because the retailer does not want to try to put this package back together and then put it back on the sales floor and even discount it. They've got to send it back to the manufacturer. The manufacturer is going to repackage the same bulb or refurbish it and then send it back. So it just increases the cost for everyone. So manufacturers, please find ways of making your packaging a lot easier to put back together, and you can return it to the store, and the store can just put it right back on the shelf. Anyways, that is it. I give this bulb a it's okay. If you're not going to put it on a dimmer, I think it's probably just fine. The light output is pretty good. It is not as warm, not as yellow as you would expect, a little bit on the pink side, but the light dispersion, even in terms of showing it, we can show you comparison side by side with the Cree on the left and this guy on the right. There's a slight shadow on the lampshade at the very bottom of it, but it's really not that noticeable in real life. You'll probably be okay. And you're not doing comparison tests at home. You're just buying light bulbs and putting them in. So anyways, this is not necessarily rated for fully enclosed fixtures. It doesn't have advanced technology to keep it cool, but the bulb itself is fairly cool. So you're probably okay. It may shorten the life by a little bit, but you know, we're talking years here out of like 20 years and not like, you know, an entire decade. So anyways, you're probably okay. It's a decent bulb, especially if you're not going to put it on a dimmer. I would say try it out if you like it. Great. And let me know. This show is interactive. You can reach me at questions@answers.lighting. I love your feedback, your questions, your comments, your ideas, all those things. You can get us on social media. We tend to post some articles and tidbits between episodes on Facebook and Twitter, sometimes on Google+, but not really. Anyways, that wraps up this episode. The next episode coming up is the one on the other bulb that you can find at Target, Target's own brand. That's it. I'm Joe DeGanzik for Lighting Answers, and I will talk to you next time.